At this point, you should be well on your way to revising and editing your travel narrative. During your revision work, you read and reread your travel entries, asking yourself, where can I add imagery or descriptive language? Where can I slow down time? Where can I add dialogue, or where does my dialogue sound choppy? And where can I add those historical details? This video is going to kick off your editing work. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to edit for paragraphing. The next video is going to highlight some of those common errors that I'm seeing a lot of you make in your travel entries. And then lastly, I want for you to edit for spelling or punctuation. And that third one, it's going to be really helpful that you read your travel entries with a partner, because a lot of times it's hard for us to notice our errors in spelling or punctuation. So let's get started. I want to start by asking why. Why do we paragraph? So let's look at a paragraph that needs to be broken up. It's this big chunk of a paragraph. And I want for you as a reader to feel what it feels like when we don't break paragraphs or we don't break narrative writing into short paragraphs. So I want for you to listen for what's not working for you as a reader. I approached a gruff-looking man leaning next to a row of skinned animals. From their size, I guessed they were lamb. Lamb? I asked. He slowly pushed himself away from the wall and moved towards me. He reached into his pocket and pulled a light brown fragment from his pocket. He handed it to me. The edges were sharp against my palm. Goat, he said, a piece of the horn. I looked again at the row of carcasses hanging from the wire. I hated seeing carcasses strung up like this, but my family had to eat. I'll take one, I said. So what's not working? For me as a reader, this paragraph was hard to read slowly. I read it really quickly. Because of that, I really struggled to picture what was happening throughout this paragraph, what each of the new events were, who is speaking. We paragraph because it helps us really to slow down as readers, to read slowly and to pause. And then it helps us check for understanding. It helps us make sure that we are understanding each of the new events in the story, that we're understanding when there's a new speaker. So let's revise this, or let's edit this big chunk of a paragraph. Let's break it into several paragraphs. So when do I paragraph? Rule number 1, I'm going to paragraph when there is a shift in time or topic. A helpful question to ask yourself is, do I want my readers' eyes to move? Rule number 2, if there is a new speaker, you must have a new paragraph. I will be a stickler on this one. New speaker, new paragraph. And lastly, I'm noticing this a lot in your travel entries at this point. A lot of you have description or imagery that is attached to dialogue that doesn't actually have anything to do with the dialogue. So the description can only be attached to the dialogue if it describes what the character is doing while he or she said the dialogue. Okay, so let's get started. I approached a gruff-looking man leaning next to a row of skinned animals, so I can picture that. From their size, I guessed they were lamb. Okay, so she's still talking about the row of skinned animals. Lamb, I asked. Okay, so I'm going to add a paragraph here. And the reason I want to add a paragraph here is because of this first rule. I want my reader's eyes to move. In this first paragraph, I want my reader to be looking at this gruff-looking man. I want my reader to be scanning this row of strung up carcasses or lamb. And when the narrator says lamb or asks lamb, I want for the reader's eyes to shift from the carcasses to the narrator. Lamb, I asked. He slowly pushed himself away from the wall and moved towards me. So here's my question. The man slowly pushing himself away from the wall and moving towards me, is that description what the character is doing while he or she said the dialogue? No, the narrator is speaking, but the man who she's speaking to is who pushes himself away from the wall. So I'm going to add a new paragraph there. He slowly pushed himself away from the wall and moved towards me. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a light brown fragment from his pocket. He handed it to me. The edges were sharp against my palm. Okay, so the moment he hands this brown fragment from his pocket, I'm just going to add a new paragraph here. That could be a choice for you, but I'm going to add a new paragraph because I want for the reader to start to picture, to go from like watching the man pull it from his pocket to picture like it sitting in the narrator's hands and really feeling the sharp edges. Goat, he said, a piece of the horn. Okay, so this speaker, the narrator right now, is feeling the sharp edges against their palm, and then he says, the person the narrator is speaking to says goat. So I'm going to add a new paragraph there. That's rule number 3. Goat, he said, a piece of the horn. I looked again at the row of carcasses. Okay, so the moment the narrator starts looking at something, isn't the same speaker. So I'm going to add a new paragraph here. I looked again at the row of carcasses hanging from the wire. I hated seeing carcasses strung up like this, but my family had to eat. I'll take one, I said. So I want you to notice this last paragraph. When the narrator says, I'll take one, I said, she's looking at the row of strung up carcasses. She's thinking about how her family needs to eat. So it's okay that my description here is actually attached to my dialogue. That's fine. So let's read it one more time. And let's ask ourselves, did paragraphing help me as the reader to slow down? And does the paragraphing help me check for understanding? I approached a gruff-looking man leaning next to a row of skinned animals. From their size, I guessed they were lamb. Lamb, I asked. Notice how I had to stop and take a breath when there was a new paragraph. Lamb, I asked. He slowly pushed himself away from the wall and moved towards me. He reached into his pocket and pulled a light brown fragment from his pocket. He handed it to me. The edges were sharp against my palm. Goat, he said, a piece of the horn. I looked again at the row of carcasses hanging from the wire. I hated seeing carcasses strung up like this, but my family had to eat. I'll take one, I said. As a reader, this is a lot easier for me to read. This is why we paragraph. So here's a helpful hint as you're thinking about these 3 rules. Paragraph anytime there's a shift in time or topic, new speaker, or if the description isn't actually what the character is doing while they're speaking. Here's your helpful hint. Rule number 4. Paragraph just to slow down the reader. So anytime you're like, maybe I should put a new paragraph here. Maybe I shouldn't. Just do it. Paragraphing in narrative writing is always going to help the reader to slow down, to take a breath, and to really check for understanding. Paragraph, paragraph, paragraph.